Welcome back. I'm here again with Dr. Dale Graff. Dale,
Yes.
welcome.
Okay, well, here I am back again.
So in the last episode, we talked about questions over the fundamental nature of time, how time works when we're trying to explain remote viewing. Part of that is I know that since the unit closed, you've done a lot of work on dreams, lucid dreaming, and precognition. And since we're talking about time, first, how did you get into that, and how does all this stuff work?
Yeah, my interest in the idea of precognition, the concept of precognition, actually goes back to childhood when I had dreams that seemed to have unusual information that I later learned was something I couldn't have known, unexpected visitors, that kind of thing that came around, and other things, finding things. So that started my interest in how dreams can actually be a way of being open to information from the future, whatever the future is. Because I put that aside and didn't do much with that until many years later, when I had a little bit more time and I came back to actually set up experiments that were based on dreaming. I was working with dreaming during the remote viewing program all the time. It was something I did in the evening, of course. It was easy for me to do that. And I could work independent of anybody. So I would set up personal projects that involved dreaming about things I would see later, or people I would meet, what would they look like, or situations that would happen during the week that I might need to know about. So I always kept open to that possibility. And then actually set aside time, usually 1 night a week, when I would say, this is the time I want to have a dream, well, really, or any kind of impression. Because dreams were working better for me, and they still are. Dream about anything of interest within the next week, or especially if I was traveling, I would set up the objective to dream about anything of interest that I would encounter during the trip that's coming up. And I would find it that I could do that. So it was that practical application of using dream work in a precognitive mode that also brought me into setting up specific experiments. Then I worked with people that helped me out or joined into projects that really were already designed like that. And the associative remote viewing technique, I worked with that protocol. As a group, we were using dreaming, the remote viewing style, to perceive one of the two correct pictures or actual picture that would correlate with a future event, associating it with either a sporting event or a stock market level. So I worked years on projects like that as well. So eventually came to the point where, this is a fairly reliable process. And I found it was quite reliable when it came to personal issues, things that I would encounter myself in a week or days ahead. And I would keep track of that. I'm just can't do it scientifically and do statistics on it, but I can certainly keep records and demonstrate that through record keeping, whether it be personal journals or whether it be recording on an email sent to myself, which I've done. So in keeping track of this, it's that kind of application that I pursued over the years. And I don't do it now anymore, but years ago, I did workshops with people in the local areas and emphasized that they develop an ability to recall dreams, and found that working with them was useful for them as well as for me. And then we would set up projects to work on too, where they would say, where am I going to be 3 days from now? And they may not even know themselves exactly where they're going to be at 2:00 in the afternoon, for example. So we would do that kind of thing, just to keep in touch with this precognitive ability. We just assumed it worked and had many debates on theory and how can this occur, like we discussed earlier. But we just finally say, well, it's a feature of the universe, and we just have to accept it. And maybe let philosophers and theologians or whoever is interested in time and the future, and so theoretical physicists who would think about this kind of thing. But It just does not seem to be part of physics that we can relate to. We can talk about non-locality. We can talk about retrocausation, the idea of time flowing backward and sending signals from the future to the present. But that, like I mentioned in the earlier discussion, it's not going to really satisfy an understanding of how can we tap into future information. And some of the work I did that became published in an American Institute of Physics publication had to do with some work I did with specifically dreaming about news pictures, photos that would appear that would be published in the future news. One series of experiments was for 3 days ahead, and another was for 7 days ahead. And I never expected the one 7 days ahead to have any kind of reliability, but those dreams also were accurate. And these were pictures that could not be predictable from current news trends. It was just a certain page in a certain area of a newspaper.
And when you say a certain page, prior to going to sleep, do you specify what that page number is going to be in what section?
Yes, because this particular paper, before it sold out to a syndicated version, and no longer can do that. It's too many advertisements. But at that time, a particular page, and it varied between page number 6 and 7, usually page 6, there was always one section called Around the World News that was consistent, page day after day after day. And that picture in there was just a random thing that the editor would select from stacks of 100 that were given to him, and then from the Associated Press photographers that was sent to him. I even talked to the editor about this, and I asked him how he chose those pictures. I look at a few, and some seem good, some seem good. I just choose one. So, and these pictures were just about anything, Just a little contest here and there, a strange-looking dog, had nothing to do with current news. But they were great targets because they couldn't be guessed. They couldn't be deducible from anything that the rest of the paper had or that they had been published any time. But just totally different. It was perfect for this kind of experimentation. And these were real live events. It could be people standing in a certain angle or costume or waiting for somebody, or some of them included accidents. This is 7 days ahead that might have been weather related or person created. And these were also attainable in dreams. So with this kind of correlation, really, I wonder about the future. How is it that these pictures are not even existing anywhere at all? They're not even planned, most of them. And the positioning of the photographer and all the people in them have to be so precise in order for that photo to be reproduced as it is. So how do all these actors come together in a still photograph that far ahead in time? And then there are many photos that could have been selected, but that was the one that was selected. So it's a puzzle. It's really a mystery. But, as the phenomena is, it's a mystery. And it tells us, and once again, not just because people experience profound precognition, the once in a lifetime deals, for example, but what I'm talking about here are the small, simple things. An unusual photo that you'll be looking at 7 days from now. There it is in the future, already waiting for you. So how can that be?
And when you say that correlation's high, what's the hit rate on these predictions for 7 days out?
The one I did that was really good control. We did 32 or 33 sessions. I was working with a colleague on these, and I had statistics on that. About 70% of them had really good correlation. Another 20% had moderate. And then there were the 10% that, no, I don't know where it was. I don't know. It's somewhere else, but it didn't connect. So it's not 100%. Not 100%. But
that's still significantly better than chance.
Yeah. Now, in the long-term project I worked on, with 2 photos that were selected based on a future outcome of a sports event or a stock market level. Again, that was also around 65, 70%. So yeah, they're not perfect, but they do hold up. Now, in examples I'm giving you here with associative technique, which is a binary process where you have one of two pictures. One of them will be correlating with a future outcome that your colleague will learn at that time later on when the event occurs. And then that picture is designated as the target, the one that you're to dream about a couple of days earlier. The information that comes through just kind of limited just to that picture. You don't have thousands of others floating around from the Associated Press anywhere. So it's more of a limiting thing, but I didn't see a great deal of accuracy difference between the quality. There, when you know it's going to be one of two, you don't know which one of two, you're blind to them, or the accuracy that occurs in the newspaper with 7 days ahead from the stacks of 100 of them. I've done experiments with colleagues have set up the task for dreamers, and this is a group project that's involved in several of these over the years. And the target that she selects 3 days later is randomly selected by a random page that she determines and goes to an art book and opens up to that page. So here you have a thick art publication that might have hundreds of pages in it. And the number is randomly selected. And that's the page that you end up dreaming about. I mean, these are the things you do, and you don't think about them too much afterwards.
Well, even the probability of getting this stuff right by chance is not 50%. It approaches zero, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm using that example, because you go into stacks of possibilities. So, yeah, and it has more strength in terms of convincing people than it does by the binary method.
How does somebody do this? Let's say somebody in the audience wants to start trying to do this process tomorrow. How do you do it?
It's deceptively simple. This is the whole issue with the whole field. It's not that complicated. We tend to make it complicated. The key thing is belief and acceptance. You get around that. And maybe that's not so difficult in today's world with the internet and all the information floating around. In the 70s, this was a difficult thing. But when I do workshops, or even now when people are talking about this, they're very simple. I'll say, if you want to do dream work on this, then tonight, right before you go to sleep, or during the day, just simply keep repeating to yourself, I'm going to remember. Now, let me back off. If you don't remember dreams at all routinely, then you need to develop a practice of remembering dreams. And you might take you a couple of nights or even a couple of weeks to get to the point where you can remember and record a dream fairly accurately. Okay. So now we dream about 20 to 30% of the time anyway. I'm talking about what's called rapid eye movement dreams, where you actually have scenes to look at. And this is how researchers identified that these dreams were occurring. They would watch people while they were sleeping in a sleep lab. And whenever their eyeballs started moving around, they would wake them up and say, what's going on? Oh, we're looking at a dream. So, that's a valid assessment that 20 or 25% of the time you have these kinds of dreams. So they're happening anyway. So you're not intruding on your mind that night at all. So what you do is set the intention tonight. Once you get to the point of remembering dreams fairly reliably, then you say, okay, now tonight I'm going to dream about something in the future. Leave it open-ended if something is coming up this week. Or if you have a colleague that chooses a picture for you to dream about. Or you can do it yourself with a magazine that you haven't opened. Just say, tonight I'm going to dream about a picture on page number 32. You do it randomly, and you say, okay, I intend to dream about the content of a picture on that page, or whatever the object is. And you write the objective. You might want to do it repeatedly several times during the day, and then write it again at night in your journal, and you keep notes of it. When you wake up, you just jot down brief notes what the dream was about. And then as soon as possible in the morning, compare it to the target objective. So you do this several times and you'll find that's working for you. And it may not be 100% accurate, but you'll see enough in there to say, yeah, I really did get that feature of that unusual picture or whatever. It doesn't have to be unusual, any kind of picture. So you work at it. It's simply a matter of intending, believing, and intending and keeping at it and keep practicing for a while. So intention and keeping track. Writing things in a journal is helpful because it shows that you are serious about what you want to do and you want to keep track of it. So keeping records, getting feedback, and there you are. You're on your way to remembering a picture that you have no way of knowing about, but then you'll see it later and find that it's correlated to that dream.
Now, are there any books folks should check out in order to get better at this or to learn more about the process?
Yeah. Dream Recall is full of books. There's so many things on dream work that exists. The International Association for the Study of Dreams has annual conferences of the many members that are with ASD, the Association for the Study of Dreams. The many books available that their members have published. Just Google dream work, anything with dream space or the Association for the Study of Dreams, and you will find a reference to resources there as well. And so that's, I think, the easiest way to start with dream work. Most bookstores will have a section.
But yeah, you could find it on Amazon probably pretty easily.
Yeah, just dig around, you find it so much. I also have written 2 books, but they're out of print, so I'm not going to promote them right now. I'm hoping to have an update to those where I will really focus more on the very thing we're talking about here. But basically, to find guidance in the ASD archives here.
And how long did it take you to get good at this? Did it happen relatively quickly, or is it something that, like you said, takes some time?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. As a young kid, I didn't have too much trouble remembering dreams, and then the spontaneous precognitive ones were too few and far between for me to make any kind of conclusion on how reliable they could be for me. And then when I finally got back to this many years later, it did take me a while. It might have taken me several months, but part of that was a resistance. I really hadn't got to the point of really accepting the phenomena, even though I did as a kid. It took me a long time to get back to that. But once I got past certain psychological barriers, then it was just right there. The next night there it was. And once I decided to keep a dream journal, take it seriously, the very second dream was a very startling precognitive dream. So I wasn't even expecting it. So there it was. Then after that, I didn't have too much trouble setting the intention to have precognitive dreams, not just ordinary dreams. But working with dreams is useful for another aspect, not just for the precognitive material, but they're really great from a personal point of view as well. They kind of keep us on the level, so to speak, and we monitor our own situation. And dreams are like a mirror that you look at. Is that really me? Does that really represent me? The dream. So they're really good from that point of view. And they're also very good from a health point of view. They tend to present information relative to maybe some health issues that might be emerging that you're not aware of. A friend of mine actually wrote a book on all this when he had a very vivid dream that had to do with a problem he couldn't figure out. It looked physical, but there's something wrong somewhere in the nose area, wherever it was. And ultimately, the doctors they couldn't find anything wrong until. So finally, after about the 3rd visit, they did discover the beginning of cancer there, and they were able to operate successfully. This is an example. There are many stories like that. People having dreams about a certain red spot showing up in a certain part of their body, but there's nothing that can be found when they go to the doctor. But then the next visit or 2 visits later, there they find the beginning of something that needs to be attended to. So our sleeping mind is monitoring ourselves, our bodies. These are not necessarily called precognitive, prodromal, I think is the word given, but they're still extremely useful and are probably more valuable than any precognitive dream because they affect us very directly, dramatically. And of course, issues having to do with personal relationships show up in dreams too. So ways to resolve issues, problems, and communication. Working with dreams is extremely beneficial. And then when you tie it into the precognitive features, hey, listen, you got a real good thing going. And it's straightforward. You just simply intend to remember dreams and set aside some easily verifiable objective, either independently or with a colleague.
Where's this information coming from? Is it coming from your subconscious or the collective unconscious, or from somewhere that's not you?
Wow. Okay. A lot of the information is your own subconscious. Now, some of the deeper dreams, particularly those that occur in a type of dreaming that we're calling lucid dreaming, there you seem to be entering into a different type of sleep domain where you do have archetypal figures, where you do have elements that go beyond your ordinary consciousness, awareness. Different layers of reality to show up there. You even contact with deceased personalities. You seem to be entering into that area, that mode as well. So whatever that is it a collective unconscious, or is it just simply another domain of existence, which is both, it looks like it has personal aspects as well as it does symbolic aspects, energetic aspects. So there's a huge area that lucid dreamers can explore here for different insights in terms of how the universe is at that level in the mental frame exists in terms of its different energy forms and beings and whatever. It's a mythological world in there.
Is the DoD doing anything with this stuff, or is it just too far out there for them to get involved just yet?
If there's any dream work interest in the DoD, it might be life science departments where they might consider working with dreams useful from a human factors point of view, from along the lines we were just talking about here, from other developing skills, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I know some sports figures are very open about using lucid dreaming for improving the particular thing they want to develop. I think many years ago, Arnold Palmer, the well-known golfer, used lucid dreaming to practice golf swings. There's a basis for that at Harvard Medical School. Has people actually follow this and look at the effects of dreams on physiology and how this might improve skills. So this is a big area that I think can be developed. And it may be that there are elements within the Department of Defense or elsewhere in the government that actually look at this. I'm not aware of any per se, but some years ago, there was a group that was looking at intuition development to aid in for combat people go into the front line, so to speak, to be better able to respond to the complex scenarios, fast-moving situations that might be developing, and improved intuition can get them, help them out in. The dream work, not necessarily in that study, but I think it kind of follows from it if they really follow it. Now, unofficially, I had a colleague or a friend that when stationed in Iraq for 6 months to a year as a medic in a medical unit, actually took a survey of Army troops that came to the clinic and would ask them whether they had any dreams of any interest. And out of the case study that he obtained over that period of time was some 50 reports, it might have been more. About half of them had to do with precognitive dreaming. And some of those dreams related to incidents on the home front, not on the battle scene coming up the next days. So this is an informal study, and the official Army command would never let him move forward with it. But so these things are happening anyway to the people in the field, and they'll keep it to themselves. But use the material, and I think that the more people are aware of it, particularly if you are going to be traveling in harm's way, the better off you are to be prepared for what's around the corner for you. One of the big things I was trying to do right before I left, before I retired, was to get to get groups, to get elements in government who have people who are going overseas or anywhere where they might be exposed to trouble or potential threats, to be more alert to their intuition, to pay attention to dreams, or even to consider taking a refresher in intuition development or remote viewing if they want to listen to that and go to that step. But I never could get anywhere. I could never get past the official psychologist, and I did not have a degree in psychology, so they didn't listen to me.
Now, what was the most significant precognitive dream you've ever had? You know, something that may have either saved your life or predicted something that was helpful or useful in your life?
Yeah, I've had quite a few. I would say the ones that were really helpful for me were the ones that alerted me to a friend's unexpected death. Those are always difficult things. And to be alerted to that when the individual is in good health and you don't think anything bad could happen to them, yet to have the dream that said, oh, look out, something is going to happen to your good friend. And these kinds of dreams are not necessarily literal. In fact, they usually are not. They're kind of symbolic. You have to play through a little bit of the symbolism there. So those are really significant for me. I've had dreams that occurred on some of my remote river trips, for example, that I think were really helpful for keeping me out of trouble the next day because I was more alert to the situation, which wasn't apparent on the topographic maps. And a dream presented a situation, really tough rapids that just wasn't clear. And they sure to stay away from that side. And that was the one that had this huge south hole, and that could get sucked into. So, and that happened from a collapse of the wall, which couldn't possibly have shown up on the topographic map. So, and then there were other incidents that were alerts to just unusual situations, not necessarily life-threatening, but just enough to make me pay more attention in the travels ahead. And then, of course, there were the big ones that I couldn't really do anything about, like 9/11 disaster or other airplane crashes. They weren't what you could call dreams that were helpful for me directly. But they alerted me to the potential that we have this ability and we were able to tap into it in a larger sense as a society. And maybe we could band together and prevent the terrorists from taking over the airplane, for example, or do something here to avoid some approaching natural an explosion somewhere from whatever cause it might be. So the potential is there, but I think as a society, we are a long way from applying it beyond what we can do at a personal level by just simply not to go there, or to avoid it, not to go on the airplane if that's the one that you really think might have a problem. And I worked years ago with an individual that actually did that. He got off, did not go on a particular flight he was scheduled on, and that was the flight that had the disaster. So it's actually a life-saving thing for him. And I haven't had those kinds of situations, but I can kind of see how that can happen. And sometimes even simple things. Years ago, in the Washington, D.C. area, as an active member of the Sierra Club, on the weekends, we take groups into the Shenandoah Mountains on hikes and retreats and whatever. And there were times, even before the trip again, I'd have a dream about a certain individual or a certain situation. And I was alerted to it. I was alerted to an individual that might react to bee stings, and was able to, for example, to be prepared for that. I had the right equipment with me. So little things, but they add up because they contribute to helping somebody else. In this case, it wasn't me that got stung, or it wasn't me that came close to being bit by a rattlesnake. And so that kind of thing. But it was a situation you peeked ahead in time, so to speak. Here's a trouble area. Be on the lookout. So, and the assignment I had when I was in Moscow for those 3 months, there were dreams that alerted me to certain situations Because I never totally proved that that was going to be a threat, but I made sure I avoided them. And, I'd never be able to say I get out of trouble, but I think I optimized situations from time to time. So it's these kinds of things that, for me, have been really helpful over the years. And I still maintain a dream record. I still keep track of dreams and pay attention to what might be useful for me or anybody, not just me. I don't do this from a strictly personal level. It's just my wife and family as well. So, it's little things, but that's to me important as well, not always the big spectacular event.
Any final words of wisdom for folks listening?
Yes, I think really what the work in remote viewing has done, which is getting a lot of publicity, and some of the other work, which is not quite as visible, like the dream work, or even some of the previous work that occurred at Duke University in the 30s and 40s, and just playing what I would call intuition. I think that all that work is accumulating. There's a knowledge base building. And if we honor that and say this is some really serious work that was going on, it's significant, from not just simply applying it in a government spy role, but in our own lives. We can benefit from this history, centuries of work, and move on and develop a healthier and a more interactive, valuable role with others and improve the health of society. And I'm talking about not just physical, but mental health as well. And of course, we can always use it to perceive issues that can be prevented, hopefully, and avoided. But I think it's just a personal thing. We can enhance our overall talents, and that flows into creativity in general, not just the side field, not just the intuition. Then we can be more energetic and alive and active in our roles as we move through our busy lives.
All right, my friend. It was a pleasure meeting you. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to either meet you in person or talk to you again.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Pleasant dreams.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.